Hey everyone, welcome back. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. And today we have a special guest, a civil procedure professor, an appellate lawyer, and my 1L section leader, Professor Glenn Cohen. So without further ado, let's go. Thank you so much for coming on. Do you mind introducing yourself for everyone and sharing a little bit about your background?
Sure. I'm Professor Glenn Cohen. I'm a Deputy Dean at Harvard Law School. I also am a section leader for one of the first year sections, Section 4. I grew up in Montreal. I was educated at the University of Toronto, and then I came here for my law degree. After law school, I spent a year working with a judge, spent a few years at the Justice Department doing appeals in the civil division. Then I came back and did an equivalent of a postdoc, what we call a fellowship, for 2 years. Then I joined the Harvard Law faculty, and I specialize in health law and bioethics, and I also teach first year civil procedure.
Awesome. Yeah, that's lots of exciting stuff. Can you explain like what a 1L section is and how the classes are structured?
Yeah, so it's a little Harry Potterish, if I may say so, in that in the first year at Harvard, at least, we divide all of our students into sections of about 80 students. We have 7 of them. When I was a student, it was just 4 sections of about 130 students, so it's much smaller this way. Each of the sections has a section leader, that's the role I serve in, who is one of the faculty who's going to be teaching this section usually, who serves as a kind of grandfatherly or fatherly presence or motherly presence over the section, checks in with people, checks in with their mental health, helps organize events, social and otherwise, in combination with the students to make sure that they're having a good time, but also meeting interesting people in the law, getting career advice, making sure they're resting, making sure they're taking care of themselves, and also plays some role in coordinating the other professors in the section to make sure things are being spaced out in an appropriate way and the like. So you have, supervisory responsibility among these 80 or so students, which is how I met you, Velo. And it's a great job. If you like interacting with students, which I do, and if you like the idea of trying to be a positive force in people's life, which I do, it's a wonderful, incredibly fulfilling experience. I've done it, I think, either 3 or 4 times now. They wait till after you have tenure and you kind of, a spot has to open up because people who do this really like doing it. So very seldom does somebody step down and say, okay, someone new came in. But I had my opportunity about 3 or 4 years ago to join the group, and I love it.
Awesome. And so like how I know there's like Socratic Method, cold calling. Can you explain a little bit about what that is? And from a professor's perspective, like what are you looking for when you call on someone? Because I know a lot of people in class are like, oh my God, am I going to get called on today? And it's a little stressful. So maybe just what any like top tips or things for approaching that moment.
Great. Velo, can you tell me what the requirements of 1331 federal question jurisdiction are, the requirements that we talked about last class? That's an example of a cold call. You don't have to answer that one, but this is an example of what would happen in class for somebody who cold calls. You're asked a question. Now, some people wind it up a little bit more. I'd say, Velo, here's something in your background that's kind of interesting. Let's talk about it for a few minutes. And of course, you're the perfect person to answer the question about this. So you get a few seconds to kind of click in. Other people are very machine guns. Some of my colleagues, as we call it, like basically would go, what was the basis for the statutory decision? 1331 or 1332? You said 1330, and if you pause, they might go into someone else, someone else, someone else, someone else, like that. Different methods of doing it. Some of my colleagues don't call at all. They lecture or they use a panel system where you're on panel on a particular day. But the cold calling system, the Socratic Method, goes back to Christopher Columbus Langdell, one of the deans of the Harvard Law School, who kind of introduced it as part of it. And the idea is lawyers are often asked to answer and ask questions, right? And the idea is teaching people through this back and forth dialogue. It's not really the way Socrates did it. If you read the Socratic dialogues of Plato, right there, it's much more contemplative and stuff like that. This is a little bit more rapid fire typically, and typically you're leading students into clarity and into confusion depending on what you're intending to do. You're getting people to juxtapose positions. So why do people do it? One thing is that it's really exciting and it makes the class much more interesting. Having sat through long lectures, I find it much harder to pay attention than I did when I was a student. So that's a piece of it. Second thing about it is an essential function of being a lawyer is that sometimes you'll be called to give an answer, and this gets you comfortable talking in admittedly a very stressful situation, right? And the third reason to do, I think is perhaps the best way, is because it allows you as the faculty member to control the voices you're hearing in the classroom. So if for people like me, having good representation, for example, amongst gender is important, You may have 5 guys sitting in the back who always want to volunteer and always want to participate, and shyer students who might not feel as comfortable talking, but have great things to say, or maybe even better things to say, not doing it. So it spreads out the burden of participation, but also the benefit in a way that we make sure that we're more inclusive and we hear more voices in a given day. It also means it's a way for me to check in on someone to see how they're doing, right? If it looks like maybe they're a little bit shaky on something, right? To find out if they are shaky or they feel really confident, to have them a moment of mastery. And different people do it differently. Historically, if you watch like the old films about this, it's like, and this is the way it was when I was a 1L, it was your day. If you knew the answers or not, you'd be on the spot for 45 minutes. I don't think anybody at Harvard does that anymore. Instead, it's like we start with somebody, they're having a little difficulty, maybe we'll bring someone else in, or even if they're not, we'll bring someone else in. Maybe we'll come back to you. It moves, and it's not so bad, I don't think. But, that's easy for me to say. I'm the one who asks the questions, not the one who answers it.
Yeah, but I guess the tables have turned with these questions going
True,
on.
so feel free to shoot one at me. Go ahead.
So the final question, if someone watching right now is interested in law school but nervous about applying to HLS, what would you tell them? And is there any advice that you would tell your past law school applicant self?
So first of all, I should say I'm a first-gen student. Neither of my parents finished high school, right, let alone college, right? So I really didn't know all the things that probably if I did know, I would have been more intimidated about. I was pretty naive, I would say. I joked that I came to the admitted students day and they were like, Harvard Law School is not like 1L. It's not like the paper chase. Those are completely out of date. And I'd never heard of either of these. So of course, the first thing I did was read 1L and watch the paper chase, then worried, gosh, what did I gotten myself into? But that's just to say that, we have so many first generation students here, right, at the law school. We've got a great group, a student group for them because they're amazing. And the fact that they don't have millions of years of families who've ever been lawyers. Nobody in my family is a lawyer. Very few people in my family have professional degrees, right, of anybody, I think. So, you shouldn't be intimidated because this is a place that cares a lot about merit. And there's lots of different paths to merit and different ways of demonstrating merit. But the one that matters the least is what your family did before this, right? We're not about landowning elites or anything like that. I will say that one thing I tell people is to be rational and rational in the following way. What is the delta, the difference in applying to Harvard Law School if you're applying to all these other schools? It's not as though the applications are so wildly different that you're going to be spending a lot of time. There is an application fee, I think, but there's a generous fee waiver program as I understand it. I'm a little out of date because it's been a number of years since I applied. But ask yourself, why not apply here if you're applying to law school, right? The worst thing you'll get is a rejection letter, and you'll spend a few extra minutes prepping the application or requesting another copy of the transcript or whatever. So I would say don't count yourself out. The other thing to say is that one of the good things about law school is that there's a lot of transparency about what the mean, median, 25th percentile, 75th percentile, GPA, and LSAT look like. So you can tell if you're really, really out of the range, maybe that's a reason not to do it. But if you're close to the range, it seems to me the opportunity cost to applying is very low. And the worst case scenario is you get in and you decide maybe it's not for you. Okay, you go somewhere else. That's a good position to be in as well, to say, I said no to Harvard. I hope you don't do that. If you get in, I hope you come. But if the worst thing you're worried about, if it's not the right fit for you, is that you're going to say no, that's a great feeling too, Say, sorry, Harvard, not interested.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I know you have a lot of stuff around campus to do. And yeah, I really appreciate this.
My pleasure, Villa. Great to see you.